you look around the league, there's a lot of teams, in the hunt. We're in the hunt. You sit here and you say, hey, Thanksgiving, and close to the end of November, and we're in the hunt. When you sit around that table tomorrow, you're saying we're in the hunt. And there's a lot of teams that wish they were in the hunt. But we're in the hunt.
Hey, everybody. It's everyone's favorite podcast. I can't even do a Greg. I wasn't mentally ready to do a Greg impression. I think this is how Greg starts it with every time Joe's on the podcast. Who we drafted, Joe? I think that's Greg's only question because he doesn't even know a player in the NFL draft.
I'd say your impression is dead on.
Yeah, that's dead on. Something about, the Greg tropes. There's a dead grandma, a dead dog, something. He's banging one of them. I know that. And
can't believe he's talking about the Bills in April.
Yes,
the old standards. Greg will be joining us shortly. He's delayed, but we're going to get right into it. I know Kyle has 1,000 questions. I like to start off with the first question because I know Kyle has a bunch. I want to get my question in.
This is where you ask yours and I roll my eyes and I go, come on, that's too easy for Joe. We're trying to challenge him on this pod.
That's true. I mean, Kyle, he left out cookies and all 22 tapes last night for Buscaglia clause. And, me and Greg eat the cookies. We're like, no, that was Joe. That wasn't us. So I want him to get his questions in, but I want to start with this one because I never thought I'd say this in my life. I hope the Bills draft a running back in the first round.
Wow.
I'm all aboard. Bijan, is that how you pronounce his name?
Bijan.
Bijan is real.
Yes.
He is a bitchin'.
Yes.
Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson.
This is embarrassing for the podcast that you just
It's so tough to look at how to pronounce people's names.
I looked Bijan.
I looked at videos through YouTube and people just say his last name.
You could have said
it. Everything I read, he's a top 3 talent, and if you have that opportunity, I think you do it. They could still get a receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round. They could trade for Hopkins. He has a mustard called Bijan Mustardson. That's fun.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does. A pun worthy of In the Hunt.
I didn't see that in Dane Brugler's draft guide.
Well, that makes him. He should be on the top of the freaks list.
Man,
got his own mustard.
Those Texas backers or whatever they are.
Bean admitted he doesn't have a lot of first round grades on people. He has a first round grade on this one. So if he's there, I think they might pick him. I do have concerns. I'm worried that if McDermott gets a good running back, we never pass again. And, it's bad allocation of resources, but I want to know, am I dumb? Am I on anything? Do you think they like him?
I mean, honestly, you're talking to the guy who was pushing forward the idea of Breece Hall last year, and he turned out to be pretty good, right?
And you know what? You were right.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. The Bills, to me, I know you don't judge rookies just by 1 year, but I would be so much more pumped for the Bills if they had Breece Hall, a 2nd round and a 4th round, because they traded up to get Elam, and he barely played most of the year. That doesn't mean he's going to be bad, but it's just I'd be so much better if they had Breece Hall. So I say we overcorrect and get Robinson this year.
Well, I mean, I don't mind the idea at all. I think anytime you can get a legit player like that, regardless of position, and honestly, most of my analysis comes through with what I think the Bills would be okay with, and I think Brandon Beane would be perfectly fine with taking a running back in the 1st round. There's a reason why they were connected to both Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara throughout the season last year around the trade deadline.
Media lies. That was the reason.
Greg,
hi, Greg.
Greg, you're just joining us. Joe is telling me about how right I am.
Yeah.
You're all caught up.
Greg, we're already talking about drafting a running back in the 1st round. So if you want to sign off, I totally understand.
Yeah, I want to sign off and then jump in front of a bus.
Well,
you were saying there's a reason that they were linked in rumors to Christian McCaffrey before I rudely interrupted you, Joe. I'm sorry.
You could never be rude to me, Greg. Yeah, there's a reason why they looked so intently at those two guys. It's because, and that's even with Devin Singletary on the roster. I don't know that they are necessarily satisfied with what they have currently with James Cook and Damian Harris. James Cook, if you remember last year, they took him in the second round, yes, but they weren't so they didn't have so much conviction with him that they had to have him right away. They traded down and took him because they're like, oh, we like a few guys. And that's, to me, that's not necessarily, that's kind of reminds me of like the EJ Manuel draft, right? Like, hey, we're going to take a quarterback, but we're going to trade down before we do it. It doesn't really show me a lot of like, okay, we really believe in this guy. But to that sense, I do think they liked what he did last year. But if you have the chance to get a guy like Bijan Robinson at 27, or maybe even like a minor jump up, I think that is completely acceptable in terms of like what they want to do, because they've been wanting to be more unpredictable on offense since Sean McDermott took over, and since Josh Allen took over, really. And they just haven't been able to do it. No one really respects their run game. And even when they're able to run well, they still don't respect their run game, because they think, okay, this is just a facade. Eventually it's going to go back to normal. But I think the bigger problem here is I don't think Bijan Robinson gets anywhere close to 27 personally. I think I think there's a chance he's gone in the top 10. I think at worst top 18. I just don't see a spot where he gets to 27. If he does, I'll eat crow, but I mean, he's too talented, and like you pointed out, this draft year, Brandon Beane is like, it's not great for first round grades. I probably think a lot of teams feel similarly, so they might be more okay with taking a running back.
Well, if you eat crow, put some Bijan mustardson on it.
Oh my God, I put you on a tee for that one.
Do we know crow doesn't taste good? Like, what if crow is
No, it's bad.
is like
I've had
turkey?
it. It's
You
bad.
had crow.
I was in
You
Japan
had
for
it.
3
You
years.
had it.
I had some yakitori crow.
You ate crow after Tremaine Edmonds' amazing season last year. That's when you were
Did he
gobbling up
That's
that
a
crow.
yeah.
Did he eat
That
a
was
crow
a
for
4-year-old
6 years?
crow. I had to take it out of my freezer like a wedding cake.
Forgot about that.
You gotta age the crow. That's
You
the
gotta age the
it's the
crow.
key to good crow is age.
All right,
It's like cheese.
let's let Kyle dive in. Kyle, where are you going to
Okay,
begin?
thank
Wide
you.
receiver, linebacker?
No, I
where you
hate
going?
wide receiver because it pisses me off.
Why?
We will talk about it. We will get to them, but it pisses me off because I thought we were good with wide receiver last year, and we didn't talk about them last year because I was like, well, there's no reason. The Bills are loaded, and now we're not, and we have to talk about it again. But I want to start with tight ends.
Ooh, okay.
So my first question is,
I'm flashing back to the hot mock of like 3 years ago.
Oh, you had it ready. I saw you bring up your Excel spreadsheet. He's like, all right, tight end tab. Here we go. I know I've read a lot about these guys. Obviously, we were talking about fantasy before this. So
Yeah.
But so my question is, if the Bills were to draft a tight end, I guess what style tight end do you think they'd be looking for? Would they want? It seems like they would want a blocker, seeing that they already have a super athletic tight end. So would that just point to like, you think Darnell Washington is the perfect fit?
Yes, but if they have to get him in the first round, I have some reservations about that, because I mean, even going back to the running back discussion we just had, a lot of people look at that as a luxury pick. And if you just signed Dawson Knox to a 4-year deal, 4-year extension in September, and you take another tight end that, I mean, what is he going to play at most if Dawson Knox is healthy, like 30% of snaps? I would argue that's far more of a luxury pick than ever taking a running back at 27th overall. So Darnell Washington is the type of style. I agree. I think they want someone who has a little bit more of a blocking edge to them. And if he's there in the second round, I think that's totally a possibility. Like these other smaller, more athletic guys like Dalton Kincaid or Sam Laporta, I think those are probably the types that would be more in the Dawson Knox mold. But the reason why they didn't run as much 12 personnel with 2 tight ends last year is because Quentin Morris just couldn't block. consistently enough.
Mhm.
And that was an issue for them. That led to their predictability on offense. It's why they were in 11 personnel like almost every single freaking snap. Reggie Gilliam can't really play tight end all that much. Tommy Sweeney was inactive every game because he wasn't much of a receiving threat. So they want someone to kind of bridge the gap between what they liked out of Quentin Morris as a receiver and someone who can actually give them something as a run blocker to make teams concerned about their running game, which goes back to our Bijan point. So guys like maybe a Luke Musgrave, they had, like, he's not the greatest blocker, but he's still acceptable. Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State's another one. Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan.
These guys sound made up in a fantasy
Yeah.
world. None of those names were real.
You're
Joe.
taking all the names from my game coming up.
I'm sorry. But yeah, those
Shoopy Pooter is a really good tight end out of Scoot U.
Scoot you. Yeah, so I think your read on what they want out of tight end is right on.
Can I interject real quick, Kyle, and just say that maybe they won't need a tight end that can block as much if the line blocks. Like if the line blocked people, maybe they can have a pass catching tight end. So I may have missed the beginning of that as I was late to this episode, but I liked all of the mocks, Joe, with the linemen.
Oh,
Like I like I don't care if they're good or not, as long as they have ankles. Like just someone that could get.
some of them don't. So it's a rarity.
We'll shy away from the non-ankle guys and that, but that's just a point. You can go back to Kyle.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you don't need your tight ends to block as much if the line blocks.
Yeah. That's actually a great segue, Greg. You remember those from the radio?
Yeah, because the line last year didn't block well.
I have a scenario-based question, Joe.
Oh,
all right.
He's up in his game this year.
The scenario is
you wake up in a bathtub and you have a scar.
You and I move in together, and we kick out our girls, and we just do mocks all day. I'm clean, anyways. All right. I listened to your recent draft episode, and so I'm going to use the same phrase as we're going to assume Jackson Smith-Njigba is gone in all of our scenarios.
Okay.
So his name does not matter because he's not there. If let's just say all of the wide receivers are on the board at 27, is there an offensive tackle you would take over all of them?
not a single one.
Not a single one.
Because I'm answering this as what I think the Bills are going to do. Not because if it were me, I would be actively trying to replace Spencer Brown because I didn't see enough from him last year. But Brandon Beane was asked right after the season about him. He came to his defense. I asked him again after free agency, came to his defense in the same way, vigorously. I asked Sean McDermott the other day about Spencer Brown, a lot of the same rhetoric about Spencer Brown. And teams in general, and specifically this regime with the Bills, they just don't go out of their way to defend a guy if they're actively looking to replace him. And I know that pisses some Bills fans off because they're like, well, Josh Allen was running for his life back there. And what are you doing? They believe that they have the semblance of what can be an above average offensive line. And they're not going for like Eagles style dominant offensive line play. They just want to be average to above average. That's what they've been trying to do the whole time because they have this all-world quarterback.
That's our podcast motto too. Average to above average.
To above average. I like it. You and the Bills have that in common. What they want out of that group is just to be good pass blockers and just to be capable enough run blockers. And they felt like they did a pretty big thing by signing Connor McGovern, and he's going to be their starting left guard. He's a pretty good pass blocker from what I saw on film. Like I said, if it were me, I'm trying to replace Spencer Brown, but I don't think they're trying to replace Spencer Brown, and they're certainly not trying to replace Mitch Morse or Deion Dawkins, and I think Ryan Bates is safe too. So to me, I'm thinking second round is probably the point where offensive tackle to me becomes more of a reality. Again, could be wrong. I'll age my crow in my freezer if I need to, but I'm probably thinking that offensive tackle is not in consideration at 27.
And that's because these guys suck.
No, the I know Darnell Wright's a popular name out there from Tennessee of Bills fans, but I don't think he's going to be there. My guess is he's probably off the board in the first 20 picks.
It's crazy that who's the giant guy from
DeJuan
Ohio
Jones.
State?
Yeah.
DeJuan Jones.
He's huge.
It seemed a month ago, everyone was like, this guy rules. He's huge. He's fast. And then over the past month, it seems like the media has taken over and is like, he's fat. He's lazy. He doesn't show up to shit. He sucks.
Well, he also doesn't fit what they're trying to do on their offensive line. Over the last 2 off seasons, they have been trying to really bring in highly athletic testers, because I think they want to institute, and this is really nerdy, I think they want to institute more zone blocking principles. They tried to last year, didn't work, kind of blew up in their face a little bit, and they had to go more pin and pull. But this year, I think they want to commit more to it. And that's why you saw Connor McGovern. That's why they're sticking by Spencer Brown, because he's a really great athlete in that offensive tackle mold. Guys like DeJuan Jones, who is like power and really good run blocking grader. I just don't see the fit with what they're trying to do, unless they just completely pour out their tendency of what they've done over the last 2 off seasons.
All right. Well, sorry, Greg. They're not going to get better, I guess.
There's always 20 years from now.
I know Kyle doesn't want to talk about the receivers yet. I'm sure he has
talk about.
Okay, I'm sure he has a question about who's the slottiest wide receiver. But who is the most Cole Beasley wide receiver in this class? All year we were talking about, people were saying that's who we missed the most. Just a short little guy who knows where to go, who could dump it off to on third down. Is there anyone? What's that?
And rap.
Yeah.
And
rap. Side note, who's the best
And
rapper
rap.
in the draft class?
And be
Who
absolutely
spits the most fire? Yes.
Do you need someone that is absolutely horrible on Twitter as well?
That's a bonus. That is a bonus.
Preferable, yes.
Is it someone like a Josh Downs? Is it a Zay Flowers? Is there someone that's in that Cole Beasley mold?
You can just answer the questions for me. The first guy you said, Josh Downs from North Carolina. I actually love Josh Downs this year. I think he's small. Obviously, he's about 5'10". I think I'd have to check my notes, but he's 5'10", and I know he's 177 pounds or something like that.
Tiny.
He's a small guy, but that's a lot of these receivers this year, and it might be a bigger conversation, but I think the NFL is starting to get a little bit more acclimated with smaller receivers, because a few more are having success in the NFL now. But Downs would be the slottiest receiver, if you will. I think he's that. He'd be perfect in like the early second. If they were to do a trade down and like, okay, we just want to get a slot receiver that can come in and be our third guy. I think there's a lot of value in that. The way that he sets up defenders is awesome. It reminds me a little bit of Stevie and how he did it with just his ankle flexion and how he's able to really just read the defender and react with his move. It's really impressive. And he's got one of the highest contested catch percentages going, even though he's like a super small guy, which is great for working down underneath. And he's solid, not spectacular in yards after catch. So I like Josh Downs. I think he could be a really nice fit in Buffalo. But if you're using a first round pick, I think you want someone that has a little bit more potential to play the outside as well, just based on where things are kind of heading with the Bills.
Take that, Kyle.
Thanks for getting into the wide receivers, Sean. There's 2 wide receivers I wanted to talk about specifically. Is Jaden Reed, who you mentioned you like on your podcast, but then also mentioned that he was a 3rd round pick. So my question for him is, why is he a 3rd round pick then?
Well, I think his last season, Michigan State was, for a lack of a better term, a mess on offense last year. They lost a lot of people, including Kenneth Walker, and they just weren't competitive at times. And I think there was a lot of attention on him. So maybe that's a red flag. But at the Senior Bowl, I thought he was a really good separator. I think that shows up in his games. And I mentioned the ability to play both outside and inside. I think Jayden Reed presents that to you. He's got a little bit more size than a guy like Josh Downs. I think he's like 5'11". He's in the 180s at least. I think 187 if I recall correctly. But Reed is starting to get some buzz, which is interesting. And I do wonder if maybe he kind of pushes into the second round range, like sort of in the Marvin Mims tier. I know that's exactly what Greg was waiting for, the Marvin Mims tier.
Mims reference.
You
name.
don't know how many texts we get from Greg a week about Marvin Mims.
About the Marvin Mims tier. But yeah, I like Jayden Reed. I think if the Bills were to miss out completely in the first round, I think he is very much on that short list of players that they could take in rounds 2 or 3, along with a couple of others. But Reed is certainly like right there in the brain, and he's going to be prominently featured in an article that I'm posting soon.
I read the other guy I want to talk about was Rashee Rice. Am I saying his first name? Rashee Rice. So I saw his name. I didn't really read much about him. Then I read a little bit about him yesterday on PFF. In this draft class, he was number 1 in yards after the catch, number 1 in deep ball receptions. And then he's 6'1", 200 pounds. I'm like, all right, this guy should be the best receiver here. Why is he not talked about those are the only 2 things I know about him. And I know his height and weight. Mm-hmm. Is he good, or should I read more than just those 2 things?
I'm not sure if he's good, because the offense he plays in really brings about some big stats. I mean, he's definitely taking advantage of those opportunities, but also not the greatest separator, and that's kind of a no zone for what the Bills have been looking for lately. That's all they've gravitated towards, people that can get open pretty quickly, and then Josh Allen finds them, as opposed to Josh Allen having to try and fit the ball in and bring in contested catch situations. So that's probably why I veer away from Rashee Rice just a little bit. And there's other guys like him, like Cedric Tillman from Tennessee is another one who is getting some buzz because he's a bigger receiver in this class, and there's not a lot of them this year. But he's someone that kind of is in the same mold as Rice. Same thing with Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss. Sean, I'm sorry for taking all your names away. But those are 3 guys that I looked at. I'm like, okay, that's not exactly what they've gone for, but maybe they want, like I said, this is all just for me trying to read their actions, see what they've done, notice trends, and see how they could operate moving forward and what they could want. Like, I don't know if they're actively looking to replace Gabe Davis. If they were, then that would be where Rashee Rice or Cedric Tillman would fit in most. But in my personal opinion, I think they want someone that can play both at slot receiver and at the flanker spot, and be able to move Stephon Diggs around and try to make themselves more unpredictable that way by having a better receiving asset than, say, Khalil Shakir or Isaiah McKenzie or Cole Beasley or John Brown or whoever else the hell they had last year. Jake Kumaro. He didn't really play there, but yeah, you get the picture.
Well, I think the most important question on everyone's mind, we haven't talked about yet, what's the hot mock looking like this year? Do we have how's the class look compared to other years?
I retired the hot mock a couple years ago. I'm sorry. I used to do like more fancier spreadsheets when I went through the prospects. I used to put like their headshots in there and everything like that. But
Bryce Young is not hot.
Yeah. Being married and having a house takes a lot more time than I thought.
Yeah. You can't tell your wife, like, hey, we can't hang out tonight. I have to judge these boys by their face.
What a sentence. it doesn't matter if they're going to take a receiver because they're not going to play him anyways, right? They don't. He doesn't play rookies. The Sean McDermott.
Great.
So that's
I
if
wrote
they
this
take like a
down,
good
Ben.
rookie. If they got a good rookie, are they even going to play him? Does it even matter? What are we
I think-
doing here? Why are we alive?
These
Well,
are great
I took
questions.
it-
I wrote
I
down
took a
all these
dark turn.
questions word for word.
Take those
don't-
one at a time, Joe. One at a time.
I don't
What are we
know.
doing here?
I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why we're alive. I do think they would actually play a receiver this year because the one thing I remember that Brandon Beane said when they brought in Deontay Hardy was that they view him as a 4 in their scheme, which is someone that can play both the outside and inside. But because they view him as the 4, they don't really have a 3. Like, is it Khalil Shakir? Probably not. He didn't show enough last year, in my opinion. And they don't really like to put too much on the plate of a second-year late round pick, as we saw with Gabe Davis a couple years ago. And, they have the 1 and 2 with Diggs and Davis. So I think there's a pretty clear opportunity. Now, maybe Deontay Hardy gets a little bit more run as their third receiver while the rookie gets acclimated, but I do think there's a legitimate chance for this receiver to step in and maybe not be like an impact, no doubt about it, rookie of the year candidate, but someone who can give them a lot more than what they had last year. And I think that's important to them because there were a lot of times last year their offense was just stale. Like if teams took away Stephon Diggs for a few plays and then like played some dummy coverage and made it seem like they were about to double cover him, Josh Allen wouldn't even look at him, and they didn't have a counterpunch to that. So I think that's the value that those type of players can provide.
That does make me nervous though. I wrote that down because like the rookie class last year played so little, and people are going like, oh, we got a hole in middle linebacker, we should draft Jack Campbell. I'm like, he's gonna back up AJ Klein until week 14. It's like I'm so scared that's how. Like, you think you got all these new players you're going to add, but they played so little, especially in the first 3/4 of the year, that even when people were saying Elon was outplaying some of the other cornerbacks, Dane Jackson and whatnot, and like, do you get the sense that is maybe changing, or do you think that's their style?
I don't think that was their plan last year with Kaiir Elam. I think they wanted him to take over that job, but the game looked a little bit too fast for him early on. He was making a lot of mental errors, and quite frankly, he was getting outplayed by both Dane Jackson and Christian Benford throughout training camp. And so them in good conscience wanting to win and put the best players out there and having to show that message like, okay, you have to earn your spot. I think that probably went into it. I will say the way that Kaiir Elam responded, especially after getting after being made a healthy scratch, I think they really liked how he responded to that and how he worked through that. And eventually it got to a point where they had to put him on the field because he had just progressed so much. So I wouldn't read too much into it with their first round pick. Second and third round picks, I think, are a completely different story. They're picking late in the round now. And I think they look at those guys as ones that you bring them in and they can compete for time, but mostly they're going to be a backup / rotational player, but you have the hopes that they can take over the starting spot in year 2 and beyond. So that's how I think they're approaching having a late round pick as a good team.
Maybe to wrap up I'm sure Kyle has more wide receiver questions, but who do you think their pick is if they have the pick of anyone? I assume the Ohio State kid is gone, but assuming anyone else, do they have, you think, a favorite or someone who kind of projects into what they're looking for?
I think there are a few. The two that probably stand out to me more than anything are Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. Zay Flowers from Boston College and Jordan Addison from USC. I think those two guys both can do exactly the role that I'm talking about, where they can play in the slot, but also they have the capability to play on the perimeter, and they have shown the capability to do so in college. And that versatility in college is probably why I favor those two guys more than this third guy. But the third guy is Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. I'm not a huge fan of his game, but I do see why NFL teams would really like him, because the speed on film as opposed to the time speed is really evident. He also has great hands, limited route tree, which is a thing with NFL teams, and they often don't like to project with that sort of style. But the Bills have also drafted a receiver within the last 4 years from this specific offense, because the head coach of Tennessee was Gabe Davis's head coach at UCF. So that's the style of offense they are comfortable with it. So that's why I wouldn't rule out Jalen Hyatt. But if I were to say, okay, if they had their pick, I would probably be between Flowers and Jordan Addison.
This is one last question about the wide receivers, but this is more of a wide receiver
I
philosophy
tried to wrap it up,
question.
Greg. I thought
You don't wrap anything up. We have Joe for a limited amount of time a year.
I actually, wide receiver is actually my favorite position, so I can talk wide receiver all day.
Baby.
In this draft or just in general?
Just in general. I grew up playing it, and I really like watching the how specific players approach the position, and it's where I'm my most football nerdy.
Can you block? Because then you can play for the Bills.
No, we need one that separator.
I probably
do have ankles.
I do have ankles.
Yes.
I probably used to be able to block better, but no longer. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Is wide receiver going way of like the quarterback now, where just like teams are starting to overdraft wide receivers, where like you can't even wait. Like you said, a late second round pick, like there's going to be 10 wide receivers taken before the Bills get to their second round pick. So it's they either have to it seems like these late 20s, you either have to overdraft or move up.
Yeah.
Is it going by way of like, if a guy's big, fast, and strong now, like the days of getting AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, even George Pickens last year, of like these ultra talented guys, they're just like, yeah, just get them early. We'll coach them up when they're here.
Potentially, but the weird thing is the big, fast, strong receiver isn't a thing in this draft class. They're all small separators, and you don't know what to do with them. You don't know where to play them in their base. I think the last 3 years specifically, those receiver classes have been extremely talented. I mean, every single year it seemed like they just had instant impact players, whether it was CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, recently Chris Olave last year, and Garrett Wilson last year. Like there are legit. Oh, Jamar Chase a couple of years ago. How could I forget him? Devonta Smith from Philly. Like there are legit prospects. Jalen Waddle is another one I forgot about. Like there's just been crazy talent over the last 3 years, to where I think maybe that's why we see the run on receivers go a little bit later this year. I don't know that this class is necessarily as strong as what we have grown accustomed to over the last 3 years, but I do think there are some dudes in this draft that can play, and I think there are going to be some successful receivers out of this draft class. I don't know if there's going to be like game changers or anything. I think there may be potential for one, but that said, I think all in all, that's probably why we've seen those runs early on. But there's this area in this year's draft where it seems like just about everybody needs a receiver, and that's right as the 20s get going. And so that's why that's a spot where I'm targeting, where maybe that's where we start to see these guys come off the board a lot.
Well, I want to make sure we talk about linebacker, because Edmonds played like every snap last year, and I feel crazy because it's like, what are we gonna do with like? It seems like Jack Campbell and Drew Sanders are the only two reasonable people that might slot into that position. You talked in your recent mock of maybe Brian Branch, I think is his name, the safety, kind of making him almost like a hybrid type player. But like, if they don't get, some of these guys in the first or maybe even early second round, like what do they do? Are they able to shift away from that position a little bit? Because that seems like a huge shift for that defense to do that.
I think they could potentially put a Band-Aid on it for a year. I think an indicator might be that they brought back AJ Klein on a 1-year deal. I don't think he's going to start or anything like that. He'll compete for it along with Terrell Bernard, who they drafted in the 3rd round last year. They think can play the middle linebacker in their system. So we'll see there. Didn't really impress me all that much last year, but he was a rookie. I guess everybody kind of goes along at their own pace. And then Tyrell Dodson's another one, but he's more of a special teams guy. If it's not Sanders or Campbell, I think those are the two most immediate fits for what they want out of middle linebacker. And if it's not them, then I probably just wouldn't waste my time in the 3rd round or 2nd or 3rd round or something like that. Maybe the one guy that intrigues me is Herbig from Wisconsin. He was more of a rush linebacker on the outside, more of an edge rusher. But when they dropped him in coverage, he looked really at home, looked really smooth, very fluid in doing so. And when they actually had him defend the run, he looked very instinctive. So I think there's some potential there, but that's more of a projection than anything. So I think
would he be like a 2nd round pick?
Probably 2nd or 3rd. Okay. I think. Well, 3rd it would be the earliest I would
I kind of like the idea of if those guys don't fall into your lap to not force it. Kyle's always made fun of how Bean always talks about like we don't go for need, we go for best player available, but it's like normally they go for need, and this would be almost a nice time to be like, well, screw it, if we can't find these guys, let's just load up at other positions, we'll make do for 1 year, and then we'll next year that'll be our number one kind of priority.
This is a rant, but every single general manager in the NFL will say, we're going best player available. Mm-hmm. But what that actually means is they're going best player available based on their board. And how they structure their board is based on their needs. So the way that I look at it is not best player available. I call it need meets value. And that's how Brandon Beane has drafted since he walked in the door. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon.
TM that need meets value. I'll buy the t-shirt.
NMV.
Yeah. Well, the clock's ticking before our question game. Kyle, I feel like, do you have any final questions here?
No. Well, the only one, and I know because Joe's a self-proclaimed draft nerd, is do you have any guy like 5th round or later that you're like that's the number one thing I know draft guys like is hitting on the late round guys so they can go back when they're in the Hall of Fame and go, check out, I still hear people bragging. I brag about Russell Wilson. I liked him coming out of Wisconsin.
You do it every
he was
every
a
draft
3rd
preview
rounder
podcast. He does.
That's what I mean. I mean, that's a little higher, yes. But is there any like late round guys that you're like, this guy should be higher and I love him?
I'm not really I don't really have super high convictions on anybody. I'll probably stick with receiver. Maybe a guy like Tank Dell. I don't even know if he's going to be like a day 3 guy.
5'6"?
He's 5'8", 165, but he was and I think the Bills like him, by the way. And he was like just unguardable at times at Houston. So that's someone that kind of stands out. But to be perfectly honest, I did not dive into day 3 guys nearly as much as I have in previous years, just because I think the value of diving deep into those and spending the time to do so is sometimes fleeting if the draft isn't your main job. So
in the
so
past
I've kind
2
of
years, like none of them made the team other than Benford.
Right. So I've been kind of sticking around like that 4th, 5th round range and up, and leaving the 6th and 7th round to my guy Dane Brugler at the Athletic.
Well, maybe lastly, before our question game, do you want to put your flag in the sand here? Do you have I think the Bills are going to go with this person?
A lot of it depends on what's there, but I think it'll be a receiver if I had to guess right now.
Okay.
It really all depends when that run starts. If the run doesn't start until 20, I could see Bean moving up and trying to get one of these guys. But I do think that it would be in their best interest based on what they have and what really they haven't done at receiver, and that's to add a legitimate third player. That leads me to think that they'll probably go with a receiver.
I would love that. I mean, other than Allen, their last first round player was Sammy Watkins. And like, I think the modern NFL is loading up on offense and making do with the defense. Kansas City doesn't have a dominant defense, and I think going offense is the way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're kind of at a fork in the road right here, because do they continue to invest this substantial resource in defense, even though it hasn't yielded the results that they've wanted it to, specifically in the playoffs, or do they load up and actually give Josh Allen some more ammo as opposed to just Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox? And he doesn't really target Dawson Knox all that much. So are you going to give him some more help? Or are you going to continue to make him kind of be Superman for you? And that's what they really have to decide here.
You know what I didn't think of? Maybe they could draft an offensive coordinator that knows how to scheme guys open.
Whoa!
Are coaches in the draft?
Well, they do have the potential to draft Joe Brady if things don't go Ken Dorsey's way by the middle of the year. But yeah,
we know where Joe stands. He hates Ken Dorsey.
I don't hate Ken Dorsey. I
think that out there. I'm sorry. I forget you actually have to talk to him, and I don't.
I think it's going to be a very important start of the season for Ken Dorsey. I'll put it like that.
Well, let's get into our question game, Greg. Get excited. I'm
going to get absolutely crushed this year. I have a feeling.
Well, you're going against us.
Yeah,
so you still have a chance.
So last year, if you remember correctly, Kyle and Joe tied after double overtime. It was very exciting. And the year before that, Joe lost. So Joe has to get back on the winning streak. He did. Joe won't admit this, but he did text me before, and he said if he loses, Kyle gets his job. So a lot is on the line.
Nice.
In this game.
And the house.
I would. No offense, Joe. I would read the shit out of Kyle articles on the Athletic. So the Bills.
They'd all be double spaced. They'd all be double spaced, like in college when you're like you're writing a paper and you're like, oh my god, it's only 3 pages. You're like, oh wait, double spaced, and you get 6.
Courier knew.
The Bills were very, 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 very bad. Here's your 750-page article or word article. I'm sorry. Go ahead with the question game.
Before the question game, we always have a blurb from our number one Patreon, the Joe B, as we call it. Our number one Patreon is the Joe B tier, and we have a new Joe B. It's Scott Dennis, and he said, since Kyle asks all of the important draft questions, just let Joe B know that his appearance is always my favorite pod of the year, and I encourage all of the In the Hunters to subscribe to The Athletic.
I already do.
Hey,
thanks very much for saying that, and your check is in the mail.
There you go. Scott Dennis knows what's up, and the jersey on the line today.
His check is in the mail, but it's made out to In the Hunt. Sorry, Joe.
Joke's on him.
He's our patron. Yeah.
Jersey on the line today. Get yourself a nice Travaris Tillman jersey.
Wow. Oh, Georgia Tech?
Yeah,
I think it was.
That's right.
Okay, second round safety. 2000.
That was the Eric Flowers draft. Yeah.
96?
No, it was 2000.
Yeah. Oh, 2000. What am I thinking? 96?
My first training camp covering.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Life Larson. That was a fair draft.
I was in middle school in 2000.
So as always, we have 4 rounds. You get a name. You tell me, is this a draft eligible person or a name I got from somewhere else? Greg generally has, people mocked in round 1. Kyle more mid round. Joe more late round to even everything out. So Greg, we're going to start with you. Your name, Paris Johnson Jr.
That sounds like a football name. I know Paris is a city, but I think you lobbed me a nice little easy softball. Paris Johnson Jr. is a football player eligible for this draft.
That's correct, Greg. Good
At your favorite position.
Yeah.
Yes, he is was he a guard?
No.
Tackle.
Tackle. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Does he have ankles?
He only has one ankle.
That's all right. He can scoot around.
Kyle, your name, London Johnson Jr. No, I'm just kidding. Your
Rod
name,
Johnson Jr.
Calvin Brodus Jr.
Brodus?
Calvin
No.
Brodus Jr.
No, man, no. I know that name. I know it, and that's not a guy.
That
Oh,
is-
wait. Oh, shit. I think his son plays college football.
Whoa, are you changing?
Yeah. I think his son definitely plays, so I'm gonna say yes, he's a guy. He's a guy that you can draft.
You talked yourself out of it. That is Snoop
my
Dogg's
God.
real name.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was junior. His son plays, right? His son plays something.
I think that's correct.
Isn't he at USC?
Joe, your name,
Oh, boy.
Somebody's son is at USC.
Anthony Johnson Jr.
That's a player. He went to Iowa State. He's a safety.
Wow,
Good
look
Joe.
at that. Okay, hopefully it gets harder for Joe. We're gonna go into round 2.
That was quick. That
That
did
was-
not
that
make me
was
feel good about this game.
He's coming for his crown. He wants the title back.
He doesn't
Greg.
want Kyle to take his job.
Greg, your name, Grief Karga.
Grief Karga. That's what happens when you fall and stain your cargo shorts. You have Grief Karga. That's not a name. That's not a person. No.
That is correct. I believe I used this name last year. That is Carl Weathers' character in The Mandalorian.
No, I've never seen it, so I wouldn't have known that. I can't afford Disney.
Oh, man.
You guys got to subscribe to the Patreon.
Yes.
You gotta give me that Disney channel.
You need a Greg Bauck Disney patron.
We do. I'll write an extra blog.
Kyle, your name, Miles Quaritch.
Miles is a good name, though.
Quaritch.
Quaritch, huh?
Quaritch.
Quaritch.
Oh, if you spelled it, that's
Nah.
got to be a name.
Those first and last names don't match. No, thank you. Not a player.
Go, no, you are correct. That is the name
Wow.
of the bad guy in Avatar.
Exactly.
There's a lot of bad guys in Avatar.
He's the main
Yeah.
bad guy, Stephen Lang.
There's plenty. Yeah.
I see
Joe,
you. I see you.
Joe, your name, Sam Obisanya.
It sounds like a football name
I don't think that's a football name.
or a kung fu name.
That is correct, Joe. That is not a football name. That is a character from Ted Lasso.
Oh yes. Okay, I knew that name from somewhere. Okay.
Okay,
I don't have
halfway.
that. I don't have that
halfway-
Apple money either.
Yeah. Greg's
only
in
watch
like
it 'cause
a
I had-
WeWork studio right now.
I only watched it because I had a 3-month free subscription.
Oh, that's you got to get it in. That's right. Yeah.
Halfway through, we got Joe tied with Greg with 2 points each. Perfect so far. Kyle with 1. Still anyone's game. Halfway through, Greg, your name, Devin Witherspoon.
That's a point guard for the Pistons in the 90s. Devin Witherspoon. Sounds too good to be true. I'm going to say no.
Fatal flaw.
Correct. Yeah, that is
Shut
a
up, Joe.
cornerback from Illinois.
Yeah, Greg.
Oh, come on, Illinois. Does
anytime-
Illinois even pass? Don't they have like a wishbone?
Listen, anytime there's a
Quarterback in
Witherspoon, you know
He's a
it's football
cornerback.
player.
Oh, cornerback. Okay.
Cornerback.
Oh, so that's not my fault. Sean needs to alliterate.
Mhm, yeah. Kyle, your name, Richard Fitzgerald Smythe.
Smythe. What is he, a duke?
Huh?
Richard Fitzgerald Smythe.
Yeah, anyone with that name goes to an Ivy League school and they're not getting drafted in the first 2 rounds, which is what you told me I would be picking.
Daniel
So,
Jones.
no.
Kyle, you're correct. You even it up with everyone. That is Mr. Peanut's real name.
He's got a name. Wait,
Yeah.
he doesn't even have peanut in his real name? And he's a peanut?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty crazy.
My dog's name isn't Dog.
You can name him. You fucked up.
All right, Joe, see if you could keep this perfect. Your name, Bumper Pool.
Oh, that's a player. He's a linebacker from Arkansas.
Yeah, that's true.
Bumper pool.
I actually had so much fun watching his tape because he was right next to Drew Sanders when I was watching Drew Sanders. And I'm like, bumper pool. That's totally going to be a name that Sean asked me.
Yeah, and
Who's
you're
Drew
right.
Sanders? I'm not kidding. I don't know who Drew Sanders. Who's Drew Sanders? Is that a player?
He's your next name.
Okay, good. I'll still guess no.
All right, Greg, you need this to keep pace with Joe here. Drew Sanders. Your name, Joaquin Bottom.
Joaquin Bottom. Joaquin Bottom sounds a little dirty. Joaquin, I'm gonna say yes. He's a player.
Incorrect. That is Joaquin Phoenix's real name.
Oh,
Last
why
name
would
is
you change
Bottom?
that?
Yeah. Kyle,
So,
to you. You need
River
this.
Bottom.
Yeah,
River Phoenix's name was River Bottom.
That's a good question. I guess it was. I'll look that up as I give Kyle his name. Kyle, your name. You need this to keep pace.
Yes.
A job on the Athletic is on the line here. Your name, Joseph Ratzinger.
Sounds familiar, but it wouldn't be from a prospect. So I'm going to say no again.
Kyle, you are correct. That is Pope Benedict's real name.
Ratzinger.
Pope
Yeah.
Bottom.
And Greg, yeah, River Jude Bottom was his real name.
Wow.
Oh, he was in a cult, though. That's why his name's
yes, he
weird.
is. The Pope actually leads the
Twist. Okay, so this is big, Joe. If you get this, you win. If you don't, we go once again into overtime with Kyle.
Wow.
Your name, can you go 4 for 4? Clayton Toon.
Yeah, he's a quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
For Illinois.
I think you gave him an easy one because you didn't want this to go.
No, I didn't think he'd be looking at quarterbacks. You know, I thought that would be a twist.
He was a quarterback at the Senior Bowl. I'm trying to remember what school he went to, though. Houston.
He went to Houston. Wow. There it is. Joe gets his crown back. I'll send him the Travaris Tillman jersey.
No, send it to Greg.
Yes. I'm gonna trade it for HBO.
That's been our episode. Thank
Joe,
you.
what's Thursday look like for you? Are you phone aside? You have multiple computer screens, or do you enjoy it even?
No, I do enjoy it. It's a busy night. We're for the actual draft, we're down at the media room at One Bills Drive. Mm-hmm. And so basically it's just everyone just sitting in a room and sometimes making weird jokes. but that's part of the charm, I guess. But it's a semi-busy night. I'll be doing some stuff for Channel 7 before the draft, which will be fun with my buddy Matt Beauvais. And then during, it's kind of a lull until the Bills get on the clock, and then once they're there, it's a race because you post a quick explainer on them and what it means and everything like that. We talked to Bean pretty quickly after the fact. And then the work doesn't end there because you put together lists for the next day, a mock draft for the next day. So yeah, there's a bunch to dive into. So it's kind of like a hurry up and wait sort of thing, but still fun because I like to see where everybody goes and kind of the craziness. And I think this year has the potential to be pretty crazy from a first round perspective.
Well, you guys seem to do a little bit more work than we do, but it's appreciated.
Well, I'm just glad I'll actually be able to have my job and do it this year. I was scared you were going to take it from me.
I know.
Yeah, I was scared I was going to have to do that. I was going to go to work.
Well, thank you for joining us. Everyone go subscribe to The Athletic. Thumbs up Joe's articles. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. Subscribe.
If anyone wants to see me and Greg, we have a show on Sunday. I don't know when this is coming out.
It'll be out by Sunday.
On the 23rd, Greg and I are on a show at Buffalo Distilling. I'm hosting. It's a fun room. Joe, if you're free. we're there.
I gotta start writing some jokes.
It's not
for that.
free. Did I didn't say free, did I? It's not free. You do have to buy a ticket.
It's free if you show up and show proof of that you subscribe to the Athletic this week based on this episode.
You know what's
Greg
funny?
will cover that.
Quick story. So sometimes I head over to Tim Hortons for a coffee, and when they were doing the roll up the rim to win, and they do it digitally now, and so my wife and I would take turns spinning on the app, and the first time we won, 3-month subscription to the Athletic. I'm like, gotta be. I'm like, well, I could put this into use, I think. I just thought it was funny. Anyway, thanks for having me, guys.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for doing it,
coming
Joe.
out.
Always appreciated.
Yeah. I gotta go. I'm at work. I have work to do.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Ooh, Greg, odds ain't gonna get easier. Ooh, Kyle could have been righter. Ooh, Sean, tell us bills will get better. Ooh, guys, things should be fine now. Someday, yeah, we'll get it together and we'll win that ball. Hopefully before your blue cheese expires. Someday, yeah, we'll have a parade 4 feet of snow. Someday, when you're old and retired,